Our first panel discussion here at the Work in Sri Lanka Conference 2015 will be a rediscovery of home. A panel discussion with recent returnees sharing their experiences of moving back and working here in Sri Lanka. It's my pleasure to introduce the panelists. Let me start off with Kavan Weerasinghe, who is the Vice President of Brandix I3. Could we have you on stage, sir? Kavan, ladies and gentlemen, is responsible for the customer acquisition and relationship management at Brandix I3 and is a key driver of growth plans for North America and specifically for Brandix I3 Managed Services. He has over 20 years of industry experience and over 10 years experiences in managed services. He's also a valuable mentor to the software and operational teams. He has a successful record of managing 24/7 on-site offshore teams and possesses extensive experience on lean and continuous service improvement initiatives. Kavan holds a bachelor's in information systems from Clarion University, Pennsylvania, and a master's in information and telecommunication from Johns Hopkins University, Maryland, USA. Thank you for joining us, Kavan. Also joining us will be Himali de Silva, Senior Project Manager for the Center of Excellence at MIT. She's currently working on the Center of Excellence for Project Management and has 10+ years of Big Four and boutique technology consulting, as well as financial services industry experience across the UK, US, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. Himali obtained her bachelor's degree in business from Monash University, Australia, and a master's in finance and financial law from the SOS University in UK. Thank you so much for joining us. Joining us next will be Anuk Wickramasinghe. He makes his way to the stage. He is a partner of a boutique investment bank started in Sydney, moved to Sri Lanka in 2009. He is now part of an investment vehicle specializing in financial services, education, food services, renewable energy. He has a BA from Florida Tech and 2 master's degrees in international business and entrepreneurship at the University of Sydney. Thank you, Anuk, for joining us. Our next panelist, Oshani de Silva, is an associate director at PwC. Thank you for joining us. She's a qualified accountant and marketer with an MBA from UK specializing in international business. She has 17 years experience in industries such as manufacturing, financial services, and management consulting, both in UK for 10 years and in Sri Lanka for 7 years. After qualifying as an accountant, she started her career in Sri Lanka at MS Holdings and Holcim Lanka. She then moved to UK where she worked at HSBC and KPMG. She returned to Sri Lanka 2 years ago with her family and is currently working at PwC in the capacity of an associate director heading the enterprise consulting division. Oshani de Silva, ladies and gentlemen. Our next panelist is Ravin Fernando. Ravin is a qualified and motivated media marketing professional with skills in product management, brand dev, and media planning. He has 15+ years of experience working in multiple territories on both client and account management sides. Key areas of specialization include sports, music, digital, and media. Ravin is currently in transition from its sports marketing role and exploring some entrepreneurial ventures. He was previously a marketing manager for Chelsea Football Club. And holds a postgraduate diploma in marketing from SIM UK. Thank you for joining us, Ravin. Moderating this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, is a founder and managing director of the Asia operations of Remote Sensing Metrics, a US Sri Lanka company that provides proprietary reports to Wall Street investment firms and retailers. He's a senior advisor at Stacks Inc., a global strategy consulting firm, formerly served as a founder and managing director of the Colombo, Sri Lanka office. Prior to returning to Sri Lanka and establishing Stacks Colombo, he served as a director in Stacks Chicago office. Prior to joining Stacks, He was with the Boston Consulting Group, where he helped formulate business strategies for Fortune 500 clients in the financial services and industrial goods sectors. He holds an MBA from the Kellogg Graduate School of Management in Northwestern University and a BA in economics with honors from Princeton. One of the funniest moderators in the business. Please put your hands together for Anuk Wickramasinghe.
So we had also invited Enrique Iglesias to join us, talk about performing in Sri Lanka, but he's running a few hours late. So we're going to start without him. So great panel, diverse backgrounds, and diverse industries that you guys are in as well. So we'll hopefully have an interesting discussion around returning to Sri Lanka, what you guys are doing here. To get started, though, if each of you can give us a quick view on what you are working on right now.
So right now what I'm working on is mainly, I'm from a technology background, but right now I'm in sales. So you could say I've gone over to the dark side for the last 7 months. But it's, again, part of the shift that I'm constantly trying to make in my life. So I'm trying something different. And also, so most of my job is about 70-75%, maybe 80% is that. And then there's a little bit of strategy involved. And of course, in the new year, I'm taking on a brand new role. So it's kind of the theme of my life, always trying something different. So hopefully that gives you a synopsis.
Great.
So all my career, I was frontline project management, dealing with clients. And in this role, it's similar to that, it's something different. I'm trying to streamline all the processes for our project managers. So that's why it's called Center of Excellence. That's about it.
All right, great.
Well, we are always trying to do new things because us being as investment bankers, we've actually become an investment vehicle into this country. So constantly looking at new things. So we've gone into education, renewable energy. So that is what I'm working on now. Because we did a few projects here in Sri Lanka, especially in the corporate side of things. But then I moved over to Oman to do bigger projects. But now we are looking at doing more interesting, bigger projects here in Sri Lanka in renewable energy. So that's the space we're looking at now.
Great,
yeah.
Thanks. Oshani.
So currently, I'm in PwC, heading the technology division, enterprise consulting. Now I'm from the accountancy background and marketing background. So when I first came here, I had no idea that I'll be doing technology. So it's interesting. It's more on ERP implementations and process re-engineering for clients. So I've been doing that for 2.5 years now.
Great. Ravin.
Right now, I'm trying to keep up my energy levels during the Christmas season, which is taking its toll. But professionally, I'm transitioning. I was working, or I'm just transitioning out of sports management and marketing, being an agent for some cricketers and looking after their sponsorship and marketing side of things. And I'm trying to explore an entrepreneurial marketing role, bringing some new sort of ideas and creativity and boldness into the marketing industry, which there is, but I think it can be extended to the next level.
Great. I think I can understand why Ravin is transitioning. Representing our cricketers right now might be a bit of a harder job, but that's fine. It'll pick up hopefully in a few years. To get started, guys, what I'd like to hear from each of you is sort of the initial motivator to leave Sri Lanka at different stages, obviously. And then clearly, what was the driver to come back?
So I'll start. I left when I was 17, so I went to high school in the United States. So the motivation was more education. And education, and then I even at that age, thanks to my family, I went alone, and they always wanted to give me that opportunity to learn something new. Not only just the education part of it, but at that age, looking at several years ago, I won't date myself by telling when, but they wanted me to go and get some exposure. So initially I was going to go to Australia. That didn't work out, and then I ended up in high school in the United States.
And motivated for coming back?
The motivation was always there. My decision was I was in the United States for 23 years. I used to come to Sri Lanka almost every year. I was lucky enough, because I was in the technology sector, I used to be able to come and consult, projects here and then go back. I always had a foot in both sides. But the real motivation came, and this is kind of a story where when my children were born, I realized that my wife and I both were working like 60 hours at a minimum. And we just didn't have time. And one of the stories is that, I collect wristwatches. I call them timepieces. And I had 10 plus real good watches. But I realized I didn't have the time. So I had all the watches, but I didn't have the time. And then not enough time to meet people. And one thing, you all probably know is in Sri Lanka, you get time to meet other people, whether you like it or not sometimes, right? But that's a good thing. I wanted that back in my life. Sure, there were some sacrifices, but then I came back to really interact with the people, and it again was not about the money. It was important, but it was I wanted to connect back with people, and I think I've to a great extent achieved that.
Great. Thanks. Himali? Yes.
So mine was, I lived in 6 different countries across the 14 years I spent abroad. I left for uni, but then career opportunities, I kept staying. And it just came to a point, because obviously 6 different countries meant my base was here. And it just came to a point where I realized I kept missing things that were important to me, like my best friend's wedding or a cousin getting married, because your life is not here, so it's a bit hard to shuttle up and down. And then your parents are getting older, so you're like, okay, if I know I want to end up living here, when is my cutoff point? So it just came to that point, and I'm like, I'm just going to bite the bullet and go back home.
Great.
So I originally left also to study, but once I finished up, I actually came back in 2002, and I started working at, I'm not going to mention, a pretty big conglomerate here in Sri Lanka, and then I actually left because I was getting paid like 15,000 rupees a month, and I was like, bugger this, with everything I've studied and worked for, and then I actually went back. And for me at the time, I didn't really see much of a future here in Sri Lanka. Maybe I was wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong on things like this. So I just thought I need a backup. So I went to Australia, and I did 2 master's degrees, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get myself a backup in terms of a passport as well. So spent 8 years and got that, and then started my investment bank in Sydney with 3 other partners, and but the first opportunity we got, my heart was always here, just the fact that we just needed that one trigger, and the war ended, and we just said, yep, we are going in. And it's a great place to be, and the truth is, I think we deliberated for about 8 months from Sydney as to, oh, but let's do this in Sri Lanka, let's do that in Sri Lanka. But then I realized, this is actually a country where you have to be here to make things happen. You have to be here to meet people. You have to be here to build relationships. And because Sri Lankans, that's the culture, that's the nature. And a lot of people don't understand that who live overseas. And so many people are talking about, oh, I want to open a hotel, I want to open this. I'm like, go down, look at the real situation on the ground. And I think it's a great move. And, we all have ups and downs, but, it's a great paradise island to be, right?
Great.
So.
I think she has. You can use the second mic. That's fine.
So I left in. So I left in 2003, but before I left, I actually worked here for about 4 years, and I only wanted to leave for a year just to do my masters and come back. But I was married, went there, and we just got the jobs, and we just thought, let's try out England. So it was more like trying out England. I'm glad I did. Stayed there for 10 years, but you come to a point where I grew up with remembering my grandparents, and I'm not giving that opportunity for my kids. What grandparents can give, parents can't give, the society can't give. And that love, that care, and I actually came that, I wanted my kids to experience it, have that as a memory. And I'm glad I did. You need to sacrifice quite a lot sometimes, to come back, your career and maybe many other things that we have in England. But what my grandparents give my kids, I don't think money can buy.
I think the reason I actually left was to participate in a drama competition back in 2002. And I didn't claim refugee status. I had the legal right to actually work there. And I thought I'll give it a go. It was a bit of an adventure. You are exposed to so much over there, both professionally and culturally, socially. The first 2 years were quite hard, sort of working in retail after having worked in an office job over here before I left, but managed to get a foot into the door and kick it open and, build up some experiences. But I suppose you also have some sort of idea of that the grass is actually greener over there. And to some degree it is, but what happens is that hue of green, becomes normalized, and you also start sort of beginning to realize what you're missing out on when you see, especially with the digital era as well, with social media, you sort of rebuild connections and you see what you're missing out on back home. So I think, there wasn't one thing that then led me to come back. It was a number of things. I guess family, friends. I wasn't jumping off a major career ladder while I was in the UK. And I thought it would be a good time to come back and explore some opportunities over here, because I think Sri Lanka is on an upward trend. The recent changes structurally and politically, I think, will help. And, it's about taking a risk and doing what feels right to you personally as well. Despite all the macroeconomic changes, you have to believe that you're going to make a change for yourself. And I think it's a mindset thing as well, because there are trade-offs. But, once you've set your mind to coming back, you need to just put your heart into it and work through it.
I think that's a good point, Ravin, and I think one of the keynote speakers also talked about the move is a very personal decision, and I think you have to kind of peel apart the macro story and figure out for yourselves individually what you can do and what you can create, and whether that's in alignment with who you want to be. I think that's a great point. I also happened to miss my best friend's wedding when I was abroad. He's no longer my best friend, so it's trade-offs that you have to make. Let's take this question. Anybody can answer it to begin with, but tell us a little bit about some of the trade-offs that you made in moving back to Sri Lanka, and also what concerns you had in moving back. So somewhat similar, but trade-offs and concerns.
I think there are quite a few trade-offs when I left, at least, between London and Sri Lanka. But I try not to compare the two. I think of it that it's different. It's just different over there to difference over here, and you have to be positive about the advantages over here while you're living here. Because if you start comparing, it's not good for your mindset, and you won't really sort of let go of the shackles that you have built over there. I mean, over there are so many benefits of like traveling and seeing other countries, the anonymity thing of doing what you want without having, we don't really need CCTV in Sri Lanka, It's sort of all around you, the eyes are. It is an issue, but the thing is, while they're all there, that also is a sense of comfort as well. I mean, if I wanted to meet a friend in London, the city is so big, it's like a 3-week notice period, send an email, book a time slot, make sure the trains are on time. Whereas here, within 20 minutes, you can gather around some friends and go and have a drink, and all that social aspect is there. I think professionally, though, because, when we're talking about working in Sri Lanka, I think there are some advantages in not having such a structured, regimented system as well. You can get things done more quicker than you would where things are much more structured and regimented. You can get favors. You might know people who can help you out in certain things as well. So those are the trade-offs that you kind of have to sort of adjust to, and also, as you said, as I keep saying, it's quite a personal thing. What are the priorities in your life at that point that you're making the decision? But I think once you've decided to do that, you just have to sort of go with the flow, yes.
Yeah, for me it was quite different because I was moving with kids. So it's a huge decision in terms of schooling, who's going to be taking care when there are school holidays, because I still wanted to keep my career. So when it comes to the trade-off, it's so much easier in England, bringing up children. I know it sounds, different, but it's easier because the infrastructure is there. So if you're having a small child, the daycare facilities, all those things are not available easily in Sri Lanka. And holiday time, what would the kids do? There are parks here, but can the kids go alone? So there's a lot of trade-offs when it comes to the kids. However, there's your garden is there, so you can just play in the garden, whereas in England it's different. So there are positives and negatives. In terms of career, especially being a female, I find it a bit difficult here than in England because it's so much easier. Again, the laws are stronger, so there is less discrimination. Even if you're walking on the road, you feel that, sometimes you want to run back to England because you can wear whatever you want. All those things are there. But the positives are, the beaches are here, so sunshine, my parents, so a lot of those things will weigh more positive. And so those are some of the trade-offs and the positives that I was thinking of moving back.
Okay.
My trade-offs are going to sound really shallow.
Yes.
I'm just going to be very honest here because for me, I just loved my variety of, when I was in Sydney, we were spoiled for restaurants and bars and the music scene because I'm so into my music, which I actually have a music festival here in Sri Lanka. I love to go see live bands, see live DJs perform, and just the sheer variety of food. I have to just come back to the whole food thing. I just really enjoyed it. And also the sheer volume of pretty girls everywhere in Sydney. I'm sorry, so many. Not that Sri Lanka doesn't, don't worry. But from a business standpoint, I actually don't see any trade-offs because as an entrepreneur, I think we need to be able to go anywhere and make things happen. And I say, throw me a bit of duct tape and I'll build something out of it. That's the mentality that you got to have. But coming here, sometimes, believe it or not, those softer factors really hold you back. But when you see the bigger picture, I always try to have the balance of having my bit of Sydney and have a bit of Sri Lanka and, try and balance it out because if you get stuck in that mindset of saying, I'm not going to leave because of these things, and we don't, you just can't do it. That's why coming to Sri Lanka, I think, is a great idea. And also, as I said before, this is a country you have to be here to make things happen. So you have to come here.
So Anuk, I'm assuming you're tired of hearing Misty sing Summer of '69.
I avoid Misty like the plague.
Okay, great. Himali, for you?
So I think my trade-offs were, I have a very strong support network here, friends-wise. 3 of them are on this panel, so I walk in somewhere, 70% or 80% of the people. So that's a huge thing. And yes, I get the anonymity thing, but it's all right. You just deal with it.
You can deal with that, yeah.
But one of I think the negatives was what Oshi hit on, is if you're a female. So when I started at Deloitte London, I remember on my first project, one of the comments, it was positive feedback, was that I might be too reserved. And it's not being reserved, it's being Asian. You only speak if you really have something to say. So obviously your personality changes when you're working 10 years abroad. It's with a lot of guys, it's a different ball game. And I was in financial services. So that's as extreme as it gets with investment bankers. Then you come back here and you realize that the companies you can join where you would actually fit are quite small. So I think I lucked out. I joined MIT, and there's a lot of people with similar backgrounds who've worked abroad, similar personalities, who don't have an issue with a girl being independent and quite, okay, I'm not going to use the word bossy, but it happens. So I think as a female, it's a little harder, the transition. So that's a trade-off.
Okay.
to tell the truth, I don't have any trade-offs because in a way I'm probably a little unique because I get to go back and forth. I travel quite a bit for my job. All jobs that I've held here, I've been fortunate every 6 to 8 weeks I'm in some other country or other. So there are no trade-offs, but I understand what the panelists are saying about sometimes the anonymity. You know, in the US I could do stuff not even my neighbor would know, right? But here, you know, somebody knows somebody and you know, my mother-in-law, my mother knows it before I even get home. So there is that aspect of it. But really in trade-offs, it's again, what is important to you as your life evolves. There are certain things that are probably important to you 5 years ago that are not important to you now. So the answer to that will probably change for everybody here. There are certainly, you know, when I'm in the US, there was so many things that, you know, in the sports and stuff like that, that you can watch any sport, anytime, 24 hours a day. But here there is a little bit less choice. But again, what is more important? So I think that's probably the answer.
That period that you're in.
Yeah, I'd like to touch upon something real quickly. People talked about the risks here, but in what country do you not have risks? I mean, everywhere you go, you have a different degree of risks, right? So you got to understand that. So, and if you give into that what I call the science of fear, then you couldn't go to any country in this world. There are always some danger in some format in every neighborhood you would go to. So,
okay. Yeah. And just from a professional perspective, and you know, some of you are seeing multiple sectors as an investor or as a consultant, similar for you as well. You're also actually an advisor across multiple sectors. Can you give us a flavor for some of the opportunities that you are seeing, and also possibly challenges as well, as you look at sectors, as folks are trying to figure out, you know, where would they fit in or where are some of the opportunities? From a, you know, really on-the-ground perspective, looking across multiple sectors, what are some of the opportunities that you guys are seeing?
I'd like to start with the mindset. I think, so I spoke to some of the folks here as well, and as a matter of fact, and I told this lady that I was going to use that example. I mean, she's a young lady, a professional here, who had come here and people had kind of told her, hey, things are not going to work out this way or that way. But she had defined her own niche, if I'm saying it correctly. She's working certain times that fits her lifestyle. So yes, there are certain limitations, but then she had created that opportunity for her, I believe, from what probably was not there for so many others. So it's again about your mindset. When you come here, the country is not going to change for you. Same thing if you go abroad, the country is not going to change for you. How do you change? And it might be a short-term change, then you might move to something else and it's changing. Like my career, I'm a technical guy, but I realized that if you have to constantly change. Now, maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you started a career and you probably be there in that same career, probably same job, same location for many, many years. Now, I mean, if you look at a lot of people here, I talk to a lot of millennials, and it's about a year, 2 years, 18 months, and they want a change. So I think the way you got to see it is, how do I fit in, where do I fit in? And to that question is, I think I'm in the technology sector, so I can't speak for other sectors. I think, not technology for technology's sake, but using, the technology that you have, all the ubiquitous technologies, the mobile, the cloud, analytics, even certain core software development things that have been around like Java and .NET. Now, you don't have to be real techie about it. I mean, I'm not a developer personally. I tried my hand at it and I was really bad at it. So now I have people who do that, who work for me. So is to have that mindset to say you're not afraid of technology, but more so how to use that in a business setting. If you have that thought process and you don't limit yourself. Some people say, I'm not good at math, I can't do this, I don't know about programs. You don't need it. If you go out there, Amazon Web Services or a lot of these, go look at some of the YouTube videos, there are a lot of new things coming on with Kinect. A lot of things that people use now for what you call individual needs can be ported over to the business side of it. So if you have that kind of mindset and you're looking at areas like that, get involved. Even if let's say you're from the finance side or you're from human resources, don't be afraid to go into these other areas, because I think technology is something that we need,
Because I think, again, if you kind of look at an analogy, most countries that have, say they were producing potato chips, they know they need to go into the microchips, right? Because that's where the real knowledge is and that's where the value adds are. So think about it that way. It's okay. I'm not saying don't go be a organic, don't start something in the organic sector, because that's something that is evolving too. But anything you do, and that's something again on Brandix i3 and also our parent company Brandix, they are evolving to become a technology company, not a garment company in the way I see it, because technology is going to drive everything, whether we like it or not. So embrace it. There is certain areas that you'll fear, but take what you can, and the others get, surround yourself with smart people.
So, like, one piece of advice I would have for people who just come back is your first year is the hardest now. I'm on like 11 months right now. So one thing I've done to survive though is because I moved back from Singapore. So that's quite easy. So I've probably gone to Singapore 3 times in the last year. Just when I feel like it's a little too overwhelming, oh my God, everybody's in my business. I need a bit of a, like, just even your parents, suddenly when you've lived abroad for 14 years and you come back home. I mean, I have an apartment on the side of my house. That was my deal. But it's still, where were you last night? You came home at what time? I'm in my 30s. I can come home when I want. But it's just when you feel like you need a bit of a breather, you should have an option to get out, even if it's for a weekend. That really helps you reset and then realize, okay, I've come back for a reason. So. Yeah.
And sorry, just Himali, on opportunities that you're seeing as you're in different sectors, and again, maybe.
So the thing is, the MIT, like, we have 2 offices, and the office I work in, all our clients are foreign, and we do stock exchanges. So we have all that opportunity that's there. So I don't, initially when I was coming back, I was like, consulting, oh my God, there's no consulting industry in Sri Lanka. What am I going to do? But it's, as you said, you build your own niche, you tailor what you thought you were going to do and just change it around a bit, and you can find a fit.
Okay. Anuk, you're investing in multiple areas. Again, what
Yeah,
what
so I'm just going to tell a really quick story. So when we came to Sri Lanka, we came as financial services business. So no one really knew who Ataraxia Capital Partners is, and I bet you none of you know us anyways, still. But what we did was we bought 50% of Arpico Financial Services, so then we attached the brand to Arpico. Okay, fine. Financial services, great. But I always wanted to do other things, invest in other things that are there. So the first main investment that we did was my parents went on a holiday to Pasikuda. And it's just after the war, big hotels have come up, and it was a top hotel, and they were by the pool, and they ordered their drinks. My mom ordered a beer shandy, and my father wanted a vodka orange, and he made sure that he said fresh orange. And the waiter brought the the beer shandy, and brought my dad a shot of vodka and an orange. And my father said he felt really bad. So this is for the lack of training, obviously. So he came and told this story, and I was telling him, you know what? Because we were all talking about investing into hotels, and he said, you know what? What we need to invest in is not hotels. Everyone's doing it. Let's get into hospitality education. So in the next 2 years, right now, we built Sri Lanka's largest hospitality school. We built a purpose-built 40,000 square foot school. We have 500 students at the moment for the past 2.5 years. So we built that. Because there is opportunity. You need to look beyond what is there right in front of you, right? And then from that, we went into food services. So we brought Subway to Sri Lanka. So that's growing at the moment. The next is renewable energy. So I was always interested in the renewable energy sector and realized solar is very expensive in Sri Lanka, right? And it's absurd because there are some companies who are just creaming the market. So what we decided was we are going to go straight to the source and try and bring the price of solar down. That's where you start. Not just go and sell solar systems. Let's be a company that actually does, if you call up and say you need this, we first go do energy audits, tell people how to reduce their bills first, and then give you. So try and do things differently, and the opportunities are absolutely there. So you just need to keep looking, and you never know what else will come up, you know?
Great. Oshani, you're advising across sectors as well. Where do you see investment happening or growth?
Yeah, if you're looking at the career side of things or corporate world, there are lots of opportunities in terms of consulting. Even though it's not a popular name in Sri Lanka, saying, oh, consultant, nobody cares. Nobody wants to spend money. They want free consulting. But I think there is a lot of opportunity because they need change management and restructuring in a lot of organizations. So that's one area I would think that we could help the country, because if you go to just a basic shop even, there'll be about 10 people working in a shop. How many are actually working? Maybe 2, maybe 3. So if you compare that with England, they will only have 2 or 3. Whereas here they would have 10. So it's just that efficiency, the mindset change. So I feel that especially people who come back, it's good if we all can be change agents. And that will create small to medium opportunities if you want to start your own business as change agents. It's difficult to convince a lot of the clients. However, sometimes you have to give a little and then take a lot later on. So as a consultant, that's what we do. So we basically try to show them the benefits, and then once they realize the benefits, we try to be that change.
I guess that the opportunities exist primarily in one sense. We're a developing country. If you look at developed economies, you can see how advanced they are. Part of the development or the opportunities come from increased disposable income, and I think that our per capita income is still quite low. But as it was discussed earlier, as our per capita income will grow, you would expect higher levels of disposable income to enter the system, and that will then provide opportunities for people to spend more as well. I think there's also the opportunities exist through education and creating niches. I mean, still things are very broad in terms of how Sri Lankan companies operate. When you take marketing, for example, it's still pretty much, radio, TV, press. There isn't that sort of change that's still happening to do more advanced and more relevant types of marketing. There are some great Sri Lankan websites out there that cater to specific groups of people, whether it's food, whether it's automobile, whether it's health. And if you're a brand operating in that sector, this is a great way to target that target audience and spend money in a more efficient and effective manner. But they won't do that. They'll still try to get, a space that's 10 pixels by 10 pixels wide, 1 square inch on the Daily Mirror homepage, with 100,000 other ads. And they see that as, marketing. And, how do you educate these people to be more relevant and effective, and that way create that kind of opportunity that will benefit them? So I think that it is a journey, it is a challenge as well, but I think by doing that, it opens up, so many avenues as well. I mean, if you take weddings, for example, who wants big weddings, There's an opportunity for loads of small weddings. It's much more economical.
All right. Wedding on your mind, Ravin?
Very small.
Very small. Excellent. If you recall, in Kumudu's keynote, he showed a graph on sort of the time to come back, 0 to 2, sort of the mid-career, and then going all the way to retirement. Just reflecting back on your decisions, was there a right time to come back? And Kavan, you mentioned, it's a stage of your life as well and where you are in your mindset. But now that each of you been on the ground with, a year or a lot more under your belt here, if you re-look at that and think about what is that right time, again, sector-specific or experience-specific, but what's the right time to come back?
So, like I said, I've been coming back and forth. Even during the war, I never missed a year. I always used to come back. And one other thing, just so that another takeaway, don't want to forget it. doing free consultancy work, I still do it, free. That gets your name out there and people know you. So you give something and you also get something back. So that is another piece of advice. If they are looking to do something, offer your service also to the public sector, and I'll get to it if I have a moment later. The right time is right now. Because nobody can predict. Nobody here has a crystal ball. Tell me if you do, because I want to figure out what the next lottery number is, but nobody has it. So if you decide today, that's the right time. When I came, that day was the right time. If you decide not to come right now, come in a year, that'll be the right time. But don't second guess yourself, especially don't ask your closest relatives and friends, because their response, like Dr. Kumudu said, is, why are you coming? Don't come here. There are people on that side. You decide for yourself, your spouse, your children, have a discussion. There'll be pros and cons. You make a decision and go into it. Don't do this thing half-heartedly. I think some people mentioned it. If you have 1 foot here, 1 foot there, you're not really sure, that I think will get you into trouble. Now, I'm not saying cut all your bridges. You definitely want to have connections wherever you want to have it. Hey, if you want to have a connection in China, go ahead and have it over there too. And so those are so the time is right now. There is never a better time than today.
So I think mine's slightly different. But it comes back to second guessing yourself. I wanted to come back for like the last 5 years. I kept saying no, just 1 more year, 1 more project, 1 more thing. And now that I've come back, I think if I had come back 5 years ago, I feel like I've taken a bit of a step down in my career, because when you're abroad, you're on a certain path. You're like, if you're consulting, you're aiming to make partner, and you're competing against a different set of people, right? So your trajectory could be different. Working abroad is very different from working here, bottom line. So anyone who does the 10 plus and comes back, I think unless you're an entrepreneur, you are going to take a step down. Because you have to fit into the company, you have to build a network, you have to get back into the Sri Lankan way of doing things. Your way of working is going to be different. So I think the more experience is better, that's not really true. There has to be a cutoff point in your head. If you want to come back here, if you know in your heart of heart, I'm going to come back, then maybe the 5 to 6 years is the ideal cutoff point. It'll change from industry to industry.
I honestly didn't think I was going to come back. But now looking back, coming back in 2009-10, that's when we first moved, but not a complete move. But as a business, we started here. But I personally thought we were late. Then again, there is no crystal ball, right? So you gotta, thrive on chaos and get in there and do it. But again, you can't sit and deliberate and say, oh, I'm too late, I'm too early. But just make the move, But the thing is, again, when you keep your ear to the ground, you really start understanding what's going on. So that's why I kept coming. I never not came in any particular year. I always came. But for me, it was a bit daunting because I just didn't see it. Because from an investment banking point of view, with the war going on, it was just, you don't even think about things like that. Unless you're a death wish. But you just, as a business, right? So, but then, it happened, and then we came here, and it was fine. But now looking back, I thought I was too late. But it's never too late. Come back. But actually coming to Sri Lanka, I'll tell you, has also helped me to move my operations elsewhere as well. Because I took the chances, and I did it. And now, even when we moved to Oman for some work, it was quite daunting. Obviously not a move, but a business move. But the fact that we came here, we built something in actually tough times and uncertain times as well. But it helps you in so many different areas as well.
It gives you confidence as
absolutely,
well.
Absolutely.
For me, like Himali said, I felt that I'm about 5 years too late. Again, in terms of my career, as well as kids. Now, we consulted a child psychologist before we moved with regard to what's the right age for children to move. And what she said was, it's better if you make the move before the age of 8. So we were always postponing, and now the child is becoming 8, so we're like, okay, that if we are to move, that's a cutoff point. So we moved back when our eldest was 8. But I feel that for him, it was too late as well. This is my personal experience. If you have young children, I would move at a younger age so that they accept the culture here, they accept the way of life, they accept the fact that there's less things to do, and it's different. There are more things when it comes to playing outside, but maybe less museums or structured play. So in my personal view, when it's a family moving, it's always better to see a little bit further on what's the right age for the children as well. And in terms of the career, yes, like Himali said, if you had about 5+, it's easier, especially you're coming into the middle management. When it comes to the senior management, it's always, a struggle because it's who you know, the contacts matters, and your evidence or your proof that you've worked in Sri Lanka is more valuable than what you've, worked overseas.
That's a good point.
I personally think a lot of us try to aim for perfection in trying to get the timing right, and in that case, the timing is never going to be right. You want to make sure that you get the right salary, you get the right perks, you have somewhere to live that's perfect with a garden and all of that. If you're going to look at all of those things, you'll sort of be in limbo or wait forever. I think you've got to, it is a risk, but I don't think it's a huge risk. You take the plunge, and then if you build your mindset to saying, I'm going to make this work for me, then, things are more likely to be in your favor that way. So that, and in addition to what the others said, it's all those kind of other factors. But coming back to what we've all said, it's also a personal thing as well, Am I on a career path over there that I'm jumping off as well? So that's what I would have to add.
Okay. We'll have one closing question for the panel, and then we'll open it out to questions from the audience. So the closing question is, again, in reflection, would you do anything differently in thinking about your move? You were alluding a little bit to timing as well. But again, you've been back, there's a bunch of experience, and you've sort of school of hard knocks, you've learned, what worked, what didn't. Anything that you would do differently?
I really can't think of anything. The only thing that I would have done, because my transition was a little tough, so here's kind of reality. I came about 6 months before the rest of my family. I have 2 kids, so my wife was there, 2 kids, so it may not apply to some, may apply to others with children. I would have done it a little differently because those 6 months were hard. I never realized being away from my family was going to be tough because to tell you the truth, I went into maybe the second time in my life, I won't talk about the first time, but second time in my life, I went to serious depression. So that was tough because I was alone here. I mean, I had my extended family, but my children were there. And I would choreograph that part differently, but hindsight is 20/20. Yeah. So that's the only thing I would do differently.
Okay.
I mean, mine's slightly different. It's just compared to my transition and other people I know who've transitioned. I think mine went quite well for one reason. Obviously, when you're living somewhere like England or Singapore, you have culture, you have music, you have all these different things. The truth is, Sri Lanka's not as bad as everybody says. When I left 14 years ago, when I was 18, all I could do was go to Whitehorse or Commons. That was it. That was our social life. When now, there is so much to do. There's so many plays, there is theatre, there's festivals, there's music. You just have to get yourself out there, get involved, get to know people. You might have different sets of friends to do different things with, but there is so much to do. I mean, my social calendar, it's like, oh God, can I just have one day at home? But it's putting yourself out there. It's actually putting that effort in.
Would I do anything differently? Honestly, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Nope, nothing.
Okay, great.
Honestly, yeah.
Super.
I'll do one thing differently. I wouldn't build a house here.
Would not.
No, would not build a house here. I would have just lived or rented.
Right.
I'm with Anuk. Yeah, I had a great time, living in London, and I enjoyed it. And if I had the chance, I'd do it again. But the time was right, and I made the move. And yeah, it's been fine.
Great. Thanks, guys. Let's open it out to questions from the audience. I think there's a couple of mics floating around. Yeah. Okay.
What I'm going to tell you is going to shock you immediately. All of you on a mindset of coming back. Now, I am quite like a lawyer who never lies. I'm a journalist and I never lie. What I would like to tell you is this. Now, every one of you in this room, you're looking at coming back. Now, there's something else that can be quite interesting in that. You're going at people, you're talking of a brain drain. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as an exportable product, which we are looking at now, and we are exporting brains. And these exported brains can be beneficial to all of us, because they go out there and they send us money, We have to have money. So that is one aspect to what we can look at. Secondly, everybody is on a plane of goodwill and doing well. We all think the country is really, really doing well, but let's get back to what the minister told us. He said Lee Kuan Yew came here and he said he wanted to bring Singapore, like Colombo. Now where the hell is Colombo? And where is Singapore? So these are two things that can change. Currently we are on an euphoric level of being well. Now that too can change. So what I would like to, at this point in time, promote the idea of exporting our brains, not brain drain, but exporting our brains. I can leave it at that and have more ideas on that, please.
I can add a caveat to that. So, in my hotel school, what we do is, they get it's a 2-year program, they study, it's a very good qualification, and one of the biggest problems we're having, one of the problems that the industry is having, for example, tourism, right, is a big portion of this country's national income, right? But in order for us, we are putting up all these big hotels. We have no staff. We have no quality staff. And we are planning to charge a premium without really having the understanding of, you can go to the Grand Hyatt in Bangkok and stay a night for $150 a night. And here you come to Cinnamon, it's 200 plus. What are we competing against? Rooms, I'm sure they'll be nice, everything is great, but end of the day, the client takes away the service, all right? One of the biggest problems we are having, I agree, exporting brains, it's a great way to look at it. I can't keep my students in Sri Lankan hotels because they get lapped up by all the foreign hotels. To me, that actually hurts because for me, I take the fees, I can be like, yep, done, I'm great. But for us, we're also doing this to add some value into this country. And yes, they will come back in 10 years. They will send their salaries, some may not. Because they're also trying to build their own lives. And especially that caliber of student, probably their parents don't need that kind of support, right? So if you want to look at it as exporting brains, I can agree with you on that, but I have to disagree that we have a massive brain drain issue. Salaries, right? They don't pay the right amount in this country, unfortunately. But it is getting better, it is, right? But I can't 100% agree to the fact that we are just exporting brains, because I want these kids to stay. I want them to add value to our industries and our country, and I'm struggling to do that. But I can't say no, right? I want what's best for them and what they see as best. But if an industry is not doing anything about it, there's very little we can do.
I understand what you're saying. There are some benefits. I encourage some young people to go and explore the world, and if they decide to come back, great. But I think we can do both. Why would you physically need to go to another country if you can still export your brain by being here? That's what I do every day. My clients, 95% of my clients are in the United States and Australia. So I export my brain from Colombo. We have 210 people who export their brains every day from Colombo, Kingsey Road. They don't have to go there physically. And given a choice, some people will say, yeah, why not? I get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. There's a question over there. Yeah.
I have a different version on brain drain. I have been the ambassador in Israel for nearly 4 years, and I find there are more Israelis outside Israel than inside. They are all over the world. They are the richest, they are the most powerful with 15 Nobel Prizes, but Israel is their home. Everybody has invested in Israel. And Israel has the infrastructure as one of the best on agriculture, on technology. So I think we have to get that notion that you have the country here and they are free to come to the country. And constitutionally, every Israel who is all over the world have the right to come back. Right to come back is in them, it's inherent. So there is no question of brain drain because they will definitely come here. And they like the country, they love the country, they defend the country, they will come back to the country. So I think we will have to follow that notion. Brain drain, as somebody is a lawyer, I'm also a lawyer, is a different notion. Don't be scared of brain drain. We must develop our country here. We must improve our education here. Our people are very skilled. So my friend is doing now the hotel school is going wonderful job. So I was the ambassador in UAE. There is, most of our Sri Lankans are in the hotel sector there. So there are a lot of things that we can do. We learn from other jurisdictions. So I think we should follow the Israeli model in terms of brain drain. Don't be scared of brain drain. Please improve, educate them, and have a best of education system. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
I would like to agree with that. I mean, as a Sri Lankan going abroad, I felt that, is there a way that I could help Sri Lanka while not necessarily physically being here? How can our companies look to tap into the sort of connection that Sri Lankans have abroad and maybe use that exposure to benefit them? They don't have to physically be here. If some of them may not want to be here for whatever reason, but you can still try and tap into the intelligence, the knowledge, the exposure that they have. But our companies need to be of that mindset that, they shouldn't be afraid. I think there is a bit of insecurity and people feeling threatened by things that they don't know. They're not willing to, if someone comes in, I've encountered this several times, it's not universal, but it's not sort of an irrelevant point as well, where when you go and talk to companies about new ideas, they feel threatened because they're not secure in their jobs. They want to, they don't want the new idea. They want to claim credit for it, and they want it to be their own. Otherwise, they'll just chuck it in the bin. Where they don't realize that they can work in partnership with someone collaboratively and build on something that's beneficial to everyone.
It's sort of kind of the reverse of what you were talking about as well, Kavan, rather than folks not needing to physically come back to Sri Lanka, but essentially supporting and finding avenues to contribute to what's happening here. Great. I think Tilak has a question here. Anyone else? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to start a fight with people who made some comments, but let me just bring a harsh economic reality to bear here. The magic number is $12,000 per person per annum to be a developed nation. We are at 4,000. So that means that every person, man, woman, child, even politicians have to make $12,000 a year to get there. So the industrialized nations or developed countries got there not by exporting their brains, but getting their brains to design stuff that they stamped out and sold to other people. So we still have this sort of a intellectual laborer mentality. That's what we're talking about. And I think we need to get beyond that and talk about how to get our smart people to design products that we produce and we export, rather than sending the people over there who are now helping those countries design them. And there is a quid pro quo. Our free education system is hoping that these people will stay and work and be taxpayers in this economy rather than overseas. So it's a comment. I'm not trying to start a fight.
Just to add to that, I mean, I don't know if it's changed, but when I did London A-levels, I didn't have the option of going to university here. I had to go abroad. My sister's like qualified doctor in London. I mean, she has to come back and do this whole heap of really hard exams and probably be shipped off to Batticaloa. So it's not as simple as well with the education system. I think there have to be some changes done as well to keep the people who have the option to go abroad to stay here as well. So I don't know if it's changed, but there are other sides to that as well.
So my question is about finding opportunities. So I'm currently in the US, and in the US there's a level playing that everyone's on the same playing field. But in Sri Lanka we know you can pull influence. You know, someone's doing that, so you can kind of get influence and get into a company. How do you see, I guess my question is for the whole panel, how did you find your particular opportunities and get where to you are? And what advice do you have to the audience in terms of finding opportunities on a level plane? Could it be a new career site done by WorkInSriLanka? I don't think we have something consolidated like that. I know we have Top Jobs, LK, Monster.com, etc. But finding the right opportunities and knowing it's not a level playing field in Sri Lanka, because it's a matter of who you know sometimes, and we all know that it's the culture. But how do you see that, and how would you help the audience navigate that?
So WorkInSriLanka actually has this mentor scheme, which I used. It's really good. They connect you to people within the industry. You speak to them. And it's very informal chats. I spoke to about 4 or 5. But the level I got was the CEO of this company, CEO of that company. And I just spoke to them. And they're also people who've either transitioned or they have friends who have. So they're very helpful. And I think what people forget is, yes, there's nepotism. But that's when you're like a first year or a second year experienced person. At my level or somebody's senior, nobody's just going to hire me because I'm somebody's daughter. They're not going to do that. It has to be, it might open a door, but you have to do the 90% for yourself. So I don't think it's there as much as we think it is. And also, like personally, and I experienced this with a lot of my friends, when you work so long abroad and work really hard to get where you are, you're not willing to go back and get a job because of your dad's friend. Like my dad's friend is Uncle Ashraf, who's he's the CEO of Brandix. Everybody's like, why didn't you just go there? And I'm like, I didn't want to. I wanted to show that I could do it on my own. So a lot of people are like that. So I think there is a bit of a level playing field, and it gets more and more level the more senior you become.
I think you'll be amazed that in Sri Lanka, how accessible a big CEO is compared to most countries in the world. It's truly incredible. And like Himali said, if you get out there and you start meeting people, you'll always, another beautiful thing about Sri Lanka is because the communities is so small, you'll always meet someone who knows someone who can actually get you to meet someone. That's what you're looking for, right? These are not favors. These are opportunities. That's what you need to look at, because nowhere else in the world, I don't think you can get that level of, you can go meet Ashraf or you can meet, whoever. You can. So in Sri Lanka, that notion is there, you need to pull strings, but honestly, it's not.
I think as our companies begin to have international exposure, your clients don't really care who your dad, mom, cousin is, They want the business done. So these companies are going to hire people who are competent and who can deliver, what is expected from these clients. So, having a local client is not going to be the way forward. You're going to want to have the right people with the right talent, right skill, and right mindset doing the job for you.
I don't find it hugely different sometimes with UK, because even in England, you may be able to get a job through an agent, but beyond that, it's your performance and networking. So you do have to network, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it's England, whether it's US. Networking plays a big part in your career ladder. So yes, getting your CV to an organization might need a bit more networking here than in England, but beyond that, it's all about your performance and networking.
And I think to your point, it's a lot easier to network locally. And I would also say this sense of nepotism or an old boys network or connection, it's very prevalent in large markets as well. It's just that we don't see it or we can't access it. So we sense that it's a level playing field, but if depending on the school you went to or the fraternity you belong to, you can go right through to a top job at Goldman Sachs. We just don't see it and we think it's a level playing field. It's not. Here, I think you have a better shot at really proving yourself and knocking on a few doors and getting in there, even if you didn't go to, whatever the right school or network was. And that's.
If I can quickly add, I agree with you. And I agree with what Himali said, spot on. In actionable form, find a mentor or two. And basically that's sort of what, even in the networking, there are a few people that you can talk to them and say, bounce ideas, and they will be happy to connect you with a friend. I mean, that's, I think, not only Sri Lanka thing, but I think it's universal where people like to help others. You come up to, especially somebody who is coming into the market, I'm sure any one of these panelists here as well, and work in Sri Lanka as well, they will help you, they'll connect. They'll go out of their way. I mean, there are a couple of folks who are coming down to Colombo over the holidays. I've never met with them. It's only a Skype call. I said, absolutely, come and talk to me. I'll see what I can do for you. All I'm gonna do is connect you with 5 other people, and then maybe those 5 other people will connect you with, another 5 people. And that's how you probably can get further, not by just sending your CV, because it might not get anywhere.
Yeah, my name is Dilshad Ahmed. I've been in the US a good part of my life. Anyway, the question I have for you all is, I'm always interested in terms of the business culture. And, working in Sri Lanka, I only worked for a short time here just before I went to campus at Jawalanapura. And then with the JVP problem, I left in '89. But so since I haven't really worked here, except for a short stint in an audit firm here. So I'm always curious about, what you all experienced in terms of business culture and the differences in, someone having worked abroad and what you experienced from, what are the, I guess, I'm not trying to compare, but I am comparing, I guess, in terms of, US, like I said, I worked there a good part of my life. You call a spade, say things straight up, don't take crap from anybody, that kind of attitude. And Sri Lanka, I know it's, I'm sure it's different. I have come here every year, I know how it works, but I haven't worked here. So I'm curious from your experiences, what kind of personal adjustments you all had to make, and what kind of impressions you all formed, and what were interesting, learning experiences in the readjustment process here.
I can maybe, go Ravin, go ahead.
Yeah, I think me personally, I had to sort of recalibrate in terms of when I was dealing with a lot of clients. Punctuality is still an issue over here, and you have to be able to say, okay, I've got to wait 1 hour until this person comes, or never. But you can speak to people more easily, I think. You can get through to people that people are on the phone the whole time there. Even to make a call, I think you have to make an appointment sometimes with people. So I think it's different. I wouldn't necessarily say it's positive or negative, but you have to be willing to accept that there are differences and change your mindset in order to do so. It's less structured than it would be over there. So if you're someone who is naturally more structured, especially working with local clients, that's my main experience, then you might sort of find it a bit more difficult. But if you want to move a bit more quicker and things are fluid, then Sri Lankans are able to resolve things. They'll find a way to do things. It wouldn't be like, oh, I need to go and check everything and sort of be much more structured. So there are pros and cons. It's different, but I think it's more a case of accepting that and then adjusting your reality to that.
I think if you can speak Sinhalese or Tamil, that does help a little bit to integrate back in. Because there is, I mean, obviously that it depends where you work, right? So I work at MIT, it's a big place. There is that culture of like a local university. So, I mean, you have to put your effort into integrating back in. You can't be like, oh, I've lived abroad for 10 years, so I'm better than you. That's not going to ever work.
I think, one of the challenges we had when we first set up, again, it's a US Sri Lanka operation when we started Stacks, over 10 years ago. The challenge was, in fact, we're coming from a professional consulting environment, professional service environment. You're hiring folks who've not been in a similar environment. And then initially we thought we could replicate the US culture. That's what we should be doing. And we found very quickly that also doesn't quite work. So you had to find that blend of the local versus the US culture. What can we take in terms of best of both worlds? Clearly, our colleagues and our clients were very direct and very blunt. And if we said a couple of hours, 2 hours later, you'd get an email saying, where's the document? Whereas for our guys, a couple of hours was 3, 4, maybe 5 hours, right? So it took, that initial couple of years was a school of hard knocks in getting our folks to really fall into that. But then we also found our guys started influencing our US colleagues in how they communicated, their willingness to take on and explore something without saying no, without immediately setting expectations that it can't be done, things like that. So I think there was a sharing over time, but it certainly was a tough 2-year period initially to align the cultures so that it worked well enough. Yeah, sorry.
So I look at it in a slightly different way because I always think we are change agents because I'm into change management. So when I started working, it's very different here. People don't work on time all the time. So meetings are delayed, projects are delayed, and it's accepted. But I wasn't willing to totally accept the delay. Because I always looked at myself thinking if I'm just going to be that and change to be that inefficient, then I'm not doing my job to this country correctly. So the way I looked at this was, let me train the people and bring them up to a level that they would learn something by working on time and delivering projects on time. So looked at the methodology. So we can change. We can change to a limit, but not just change the whole organization and, put your foot down or anything like that. But it's the way we do it as well, the way we speak, the way we conduct ourselves. And slowly, they say to change a person, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to change a habit. So after 3 to 4 weeks, you will see small changes. And if we can change even a little bit, that means we've contributed. So the way I look at it is change management.
Thanks. We'll take maybe one final question. There's one over there, in the back, and then we can wrap up.
Hi, I'd just be interested, I'm in the public sector, and you've all focused on the private sector, and I'd also like to talk to someone who said, I was in Singapore as well for the Ministry of Education, and I know for a fact, everyone always says, why isn't Sri Lanka like Singapore? One of the reasons is Singapore, and I was in ministerial discussions, was that they put a lot of focus on education, and they put a lot of focus on bringing their young people back. So all the developments you've seen in Singapore in terms of the arts and the culture, they knew they were losing their educated Singaporeans for arts and culture. So what you're doing is brilliant. But I'm really interested in knowing what your thoughts are about how can Sri Lankans who have worked in the public sector and are generally quite senior, be it in overseas, who want to come back and give something back in some way, but the barriers are quite difficult in terms of we've been coming back for 20 years and doing it on a voluntary basis. But what are your thoughts about that? And also social enterprises where you mix the public and the private sector together.
Hopefully I understand your question. So if you want to come back into the public sector, is that what your question is?
I'm interested in, there's so much talent we have overseas where Sri Lanka's either in the health sector, they're consultant doctors or psychiatrists or in education, and they're all they understand the public sector, or Singapore. And how can we develop that partnership so that and encourage people to come back and give back to the public sector, maybe in a new way? But what are your thoughts about that? How they partner up with that
okay,
to do?
I think I understand what you're saying. One of the things that I've done, and I know some other people in my organization as well. Now, for example, I'll give you a very specific example. The Director General of Pensions, the Pensions Department, he reached out to us. We are a commercial entity, and he said, can you spend some time? I said, absolutely. So that's my way of sort of giving back, and the company's way of doing that. We spent some time. He brought his IT team, and they said, well, what are you guys doing differently? He had read one of my articles. So I said, okay, good, because he had a vision. He wanted to change things. Mr. Hetiarachi, very sharp person. He saw, he was what I call a digital migrant. He came into the digital area. So he realized that we were, most of us are digital natives. Some of them were born into the digital area. So he said, I don't have that knowledge. So how do I come and get it? So that's what some of these organizations, the pensions, for example, they do a very vital service. They're trying to transform themselves. And I'm sure maybe there are some other examples. There are a few of those organizations, government organizations. Now, I also saw there was an article by Minister Harin talking about private-public partnerships. I wouldn't have a specific set of names for you, but if you talk to the right people, there are those partnerships going on, even with some doctors who are returning, who are coming and doing maybe a 4-month stint here. You probably get them in very small pockets, but that's where the networking comes into play. They're doing some really interesting stuff. They're not only just bringing stuff here, but they're also using the way the people do it locally, where it helps the way, if it's done in a Western sort of way, it might not work here. So there are these small pockets that you'll probably need to reach out to and then work through them. I don't know whether others have something else to add.
No, I would agree with you. I think that there's a lack of incentive and also a mindset to work with international partners. I think that what I was referring to earlier, they feel threatened, they don't want to try anything new, they think they know it all. Rather than, I think our professional lives are a journey of growth, and it doesn't stop, just because you got a qualification or you have a few years under your belt. You need to keep pushing yourselves because the world is changing, new technologies are coming about, and how can you tap into people who want to help abroad, who want to help Sri Lanka from abroad and enhance, yourself, your business, your country as well. I found this challenge when I was abroad. I sent a few proposals to some companies over here, and it's sort of, I wouldn't say that they should have accepted them, but even had a discussion about stuff that could have benefited them. And I was actually not looking for any remuneration or credit or anything like this. I wanted to see certain aspects of the sports industry here grow. And it wasn't stuff that required a lot of resource, or it was, if it did, that was again something that I could have helped into by tapping into networks over there, whether it's financially or sort of on a knowledge basis. There are lots of people over there who are willing to come and train people over here. But I do agree that it is an issue. I think it's getting better, but there's still a significant way to go.
And I think in the post-lunch session, there'll be a couple of folks, one of whom was meant to be part of this panel, who's in the public sector as well. So Dinusha Panditharatne, she works with the Lakshman Kadgam Institute, so she also might be a good resource to speak with.
I just want to add one more thing. We are talking about the employment sector. It needs to start from the education. So our schools, it's like international schools versus local. When are they actually mixing? There are no sports activities because my ones go to international school, and I want them to mix with the local schools. I want them to learn and play with those children. But we don't have that integration. We are straight away separating that and putting that mindset into our children. So once we do that, they grow up to be adults and they will have that mindset of differentiating. So that integration will later on help working internationally, coming back, mingling with the locals. So it'll be a nice, future if we actually start at the education sector.
Okay, great. On that note, guys, and since time is up and I hate to delay my lunch, I'd want to thank all of you for your time, for your insights, and obviously the audience for the questions as well. So thank you very much.